Okay, we're on YouTube and I started the webinar right now, so we're recording too. And the first committee is Planning and Zoning Committee, if everyone's ready.
Yes, I'm ready. Are you ready?
I'm
Okay.
good, Bill. Yeah, Mr.
Yeah.
Riley, manager's update. I really don't have any report. I put my usual reminders on there. There is no update on anything more though from any of those right now. That's all I really have. Nothing major to report at all.
Okay, thank you. Don?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
You ready?
Yes.
Last month, I reported on violation letters that I sent for 12 sidewalk repairs on the Greensburg Pike. One has already been completed and the other one will start the first of the week, which is the worst one of them all. So I'm glad to hear that. But I haven't heard from anyone else other than that. But I will be writing a lot of citations, I'm sure, for that. Violations on grass. There was 10 more on the Greensburg Pike, 5 on Lennox, 3 on Marion. And tomorrow I'm going to start on the littered streets and take care of that problem also. So I'm sure I'll be writing a lot of violations, citations, I mean. So that's all I have.
Any questions from anybody on Patty?
Sounds good, Don. Thank you.
Patty?
Yeah, Don, when you did the sidewalk inspections, do you have any idea how many linear miles we have of sidewalks? I need it for the climate act, for the active transportation plan.
No, I do not. I don't even know how I would obtain that, but I can work on that.
Okay, do we have a map of all the streets indicating where there are sidewalks and where there are not sidewalks?
I'm sure that we do somewhere, Patty, but I have to look and find it.
Okay,
maybe Mr. Morse can.
That would be really helpful to me.
I would have to ask Dave Gilland. I honestly don't know. It might be something that's in the GIS, but I don't recall that ever being logged, so I don't know for sure. Dawn, maybe you could check with Dave tomorrow.
Okay.
I will.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you finished, Don?
Yeah, I'm done.
All right. Okay. Are there any other planning and zoning ideas or items for us to talk about?
Just an FYI, the intern report that was given to the Environment Advisory Council regarding the possible formation of an eco district will be up for discussion at their Thursday, May 20 meeting. If any of you have an interest in that issue, I would welcome your comments before that meeting. If we do decide to go forward with it, if they do recommend a eco district overlay, it would come to this committee. So I just want to give you a heads up about that. If you want to think a little bit about it beforehand.
Okay, thanks, Patty. Anything else? I guess we're done, Steve.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Burley. I need a few seconds to switch over to finance. Just I'll get right back to you in a few seconds. Okay, I'm good for finance if everyone else is okay. Mr. Mark, are you fine?
Yes, please. Could you proceed to give the manager's update, please?
Yeah, let me start first with cash flow and a first quarter report. I sent this out via email to you last week, and I'm going to show a little bit of it tonight. I'm not going to talk about it in great detail, but in case you have any questions. First, the cash flow had data from the major categories in the borough's general fund budget. And again, this statistical graph, the red line here shows the cash flow for 2021. And as you can see, if you look and see the numbers down below here, we left April going into May with a little over 1.2 million in cash. And that was one of the better months, end of April's we've had in the last 5 or 6 years. So that's very positive. That's very good. Again, it's a point in time. It doesn't mean we necessarily have the cash. I know I keep repeating that, but I don't know who's listening on YouTube or who maybe, whether the people who are attending and listening to this have heard that before. It's a point in time, just a snapshot. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that much cash is there right now. But that's very good that we're ahead in April. Even if you noticed, if you remember from March was a positive number right next to that here, $124,000 going into April. And usually we are in negative numbers in March. And that's, again, because taxes don't begin collection immediately. But we were doing really well as far as cash was concerned in those 2 months. So that was a big help. Now, attached to that, I had also given you this memo. Last year, if you remember, I had taken the first quarter of the year because that was when the pandemic was beginning. And I looked at key revenues and key expenditures. And by key, I mean those line items that usually are pretty high in millage equivalency. Obviously, real estate is the highest. But in other words, if we weren't collecting those particular items, you would need to add some millage amount to the taxes to be able to collect that. Maybe that's not a good way of explaining it, but that's essentially what I'm talking about. So if you can see here, I compare year-to-date 2020 with this year, and we're doing really well in just about all categories. The only one that's a little low is local services tax and cable TV franchise. RAD receipts are a little down, but we kind of expected that. That's from the sales tax. But the real estate current year is doing real well. Refuse collection current year is doing real well. And if you remember, these were the numbers I gave you last year with the red year-to-date 2019 revenues. So once again, the total revenues so far for 2021 are 1.6 million versus 1.3 last year. And you could see that last year we were down from 2019 at this point in time, just as the pandemic was beginning. So it's very good to sometimes pick out certain key numbers and take a look at them. Earned income tax, we were concerned that would be really bad. If you remember from last year, we were only about $7,000 ahead, and we expected it to be a little bit higher than that. This year, we're already ahead of where we were last year for earned income tax. That's a very good sign from the point of view of people still having jobs, hopefully, and still having getting increases in salary, or maybe more people moving in that have jobs, whatever. It is a good sign to show that we are showing earned income tax increasing. I'll stop for a minute before I look at expenditures in case anybody has any questions on this or the cash flow that I just showed you. Did anybody have any questions?
No, I think this is very positive development, and I appreciate your careful tracking of all these information.
And again, you should look at the detail that the treasurer gives you every month.
Yeah.
The cash flow gave you a little bit more detail on the first 2 pages where it had spreadsheet from the various account categories, but it's always good to keep an eye on it. The way you don't get into trouble is by having an active elected board that monitors these things every month. And you don't have to be an expert, and you do not have to read every single item, but there are certain key items like these. As far as expenditures were concerned, I just put some key expenditure categories on there. And you can see that expenditures are generally up a little bit for this year. The only thing that's down, of course, is debt service because that was refinanced. Tree service is down, but the contracts are out there right now, and people are doing work with trees. But of course, the weather plays a factor in that. So everything generally looks fairly good for expenditures. It actually is not a bad thing to show that expenditures a little higher than they were last year. It means that the borough is doing more, and progressing, and we are covering our costs, even when costs do occasionally go up. And right now, inflation is not real high, so costs shouldn't be going up excessively. Anybody have any questions on that? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that then and go to my second item. I mentioned this last month. This month, I'm giving you a copy of the capital improvements plan preparation memo that I give out every year. And if I can, that's this memo that looks like this, just for reference. Okay, now it's my usual long memo, but if you remember, I mentioned last month, I'm going to change the process. And as I mentioned in the memo, all we're really going to do is simplify preparation, because again, council is reviewing the bond issue and where you're going to be applying bond issue funds. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to do a major edit on the capital plan right now while council's reviewing things. So I'm going to ask staff, when they get this memo starting tomorrow, that all they need to do this time is show me any new projects that should be included in the new 5-year plan from 2022 through 2026, and only look at updates or revisions to existing projects. In the past, they had to revise every single thing. Now they just need to look and see, do they need to update or revise anything, or delete for that matter. Okay. And of course, I'm giving a copy of this to you because council members should feel free to submit their own projects. And the paperwork to do that is attached to this. If anybody needs that version in Word, please let me know. Just for the sake of the audience here, we use a format like this where people fill out a form for each individual project. And I have an illustration of that as an example here. Public Works truck replacement. We now show that differently in the budget. We have a spreadsheet that we use for vehicle replacement, but still, whenever somebody decides to provide us with a project, we ask them to complete this information where they tell us who's filling it out, how much the cost estimate is, what they're trying to do with this project, and how the cost will be divided among the 5-year plan. So once again, I'm asking everybody to do that, and council should feel free, please, to submit your own projects as we go. I think this is going to be true for next year as well, since the bond issue money will probably still be spent over these 2 years. So nobody seemed to object to the simplified version last month. I'm assuming there's no objection now either, and I'm going to move ahead with that. And you guys all now have the memo and all the detail and forms, and the staff will have that this week. And anybody have any questions about any of
I
that?
have a question. I have had a recommendation from a group of graduate students who did an analysis of the cost effectiveness of putting solar on the volunteer fire department and the public works garage. I would like to have a number of other people have eyes on that before I decide whether we're going to go forward with that or not. And I would like to share that with the public works director, and I'd like to talk to the fire department as well about, what their opinion is of this project and how it might go forward before I bring it for a budget consideration. Is there anyone else on council who would like to have some discussion about that? I just got the report yesterday.
If you could send me that, Patty, I'd love to look at it.
Okay, do that.
That, of course, would be a capital item too. If
Yes.
you do go through with it, they would fill out one of those forms, or you would,
Right.
or however,
Well, I don't want to do this unilaterally. I'd like to, get some input about whether people think it's a good idea first. So, okay. Thank you.
Anybody else on the capital improvements plan that we're starting for 2022? Again, we started early to keep it separate from the budget preparation, because that way we can devote more time to general fund budget preparation. My last item is just outstanding items for 2021, and I just have 2 I want to mention briefly. You had asked Markenhoff to do the actuarial evaluation report. That's still due in June, as far as I know. I haven't heard anything different. So I wanted to mention that. As far as the federal funds under the American Rescue Act, oops, wait a minute, I meant to share this and I accidentally went to the wrong screen. There was an article in today's Post-Gazette, virtual Post-Gazette, which I also emailed to council, and I highlighted a couple of paragraphs that referred to local government in there in yellow, the one I sent you. But if anybody wants to take a look at this, this is about the fund that's going to be providing funding money to local governments, including the county and city. They really look like they're going to give you a lot of information in this article, but they still really do not have the information. They're showing you a graph here, a chart as to where money is going. Municipal county governments are going to share 5.2 billion. But of course, we have not seen any of this money yet. If you go to the, where is this, page 4 on here, which in your report, I think I highlighted, they mention here that detailed guidance, the U.S. Treasury Department issued detailed guidance. Well, I don't know where they're getting that because we haven't gotten any detailed guidance yet. There's a lot of guidance that is assumed. Okay, and the Treasury Department probably put it out, and we did get some information from Representative Doyle, and that's great, but we still don't have specifics. And in here, it mentions the same things we talked about before, the idea that sewers may be covered in this, and the idea that funding is going to be split in half. You're going to have half it come probably this month. It should be here almost any day now, and the other half come next year. And you're going to have, I believe, until 2023 to spend it, and it has to be spent on appropriate things. But without that guidance, I don't really know what you do. So
we got a communication from the PA Municipal League that the Treasury submission portal is open, and they do appear to have a portal there where they want you to complete an application for a request to receive funding. Have you found that?
I haven't gotten that yet. No.
All right, I'll send that on to you because it
Okay.
came today from the PA Municipal League.
Well, it may be on my email right now. I haven't checked my email in a few hours.
Okay, this just came today, and it is a U.S. Department of Treasury application form for requesting fiscal recovery funds.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, again, this is all still so new, and they really haven't given us much direction at all. So I'll take a look at that if you send it for.
Okay,
to me.
it just says that, if we are a borough or a municipality, we're an eligible entity, and they want our jurisdiction name, taxpayer ID, DUNS number, I don't know what that is, an address, and the name of the contact person, and the fund transfer information, including the routing numbers. So this is our U.S. Department of Treasury portal.
Wendy Archer, our treasurer,
Maybe
has a lot of those numbers as far as ID numbers and things.
yeah.
So I will have her look at that once you send it to us.
Yep, well, you probably have it, but I got it just today from PA Municipal League.
Okay. But I just wanted to let you know again that we haven't, this would be the first thing we would have seen that would be anything specific. And again, it's going to be a decent amount of money. And again, you're going to have a lot of time to spend it. I just would rather make sure we're certain. And of course, it's all going to be council who decides how to spend it. So it's not, it's not me or Wendy or anybody else. It's going to be you guys that are going to decide. I don't have anything else for finance, although I did again print out a copy, the bond issue items for number 2. If you want to talk further about that now, I can put that on the screen. That's all I have unless somebody has any more questions for me on manager's update.
We really wanted to wait and see Mock and Hop's analysis of the cost impact of doing the different bond things before we make that decision. So I'm looking forward to getting their analysis first.
Oh, you mean bond issue information?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine. Well, what I did was I attached that that same document I've been giving you. I'll just I'll just show it real quick here so people know what I'm talking about. But I did attach the same document. And again, these are items that I simply picked out that could, I think, qualify for a bond issue that lasts 15 years.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean these are all things I'm recommending you fund. It just means these are things that could, and there's a couple questions I have of if whether or not they would have a 15-year life. And of course, as the months go on, it's less than 15 years we're looking at really. But in any case, both pages are on there again. I didn't make any changes. I know you had recommended some changes, and that's fine. But until you finally decide to start acting, I don't want to necessarily put something off of this. And as people do the new capital plan for 2022, there might be other things that you would add to that. And if you look at the full capital plan that's in your budget book, there may be other things on there that I didn't include that you think could be funded by this, and that's certainly up to you. But those are just my opinion on what I think could be funded.
Okay, right. I don't have anything else to bring up unless anyone else has an issue for finance.
Okay, well, if there is none, then we can move to committee of the whole in a few seconds. Just give me a chance to get set up for that. It won't take too long.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm good, Mr. Tomasic, for committee of the whole, if you're okay with manager's update. Okay. I just have some quick reminders here, nothing too detailed necessarily. I do want to spend a little bit of time on the pool update though for a minute under item B, but the first note, just Public Works hiring strategy, just to update you on that. Mr. Thielacker, the foreman, and Mr. Gorel and I talked strategy about this, and I think we have a good plan here. We have started interviewing people, as I mentioned to you last week. And just to give you an idea, you can see what the strategy generally is. We're looking to see people who are involved in the community, whether it's this community or another community. We're looking to see if, of course, there's skills in their background too. But we're trying to look to see a little bit of everything. And we have some really good candidates we've already interviewed, and I'm hoping that next week on the 19th, I may bring one of them to you for consideration. I'm not exactly sure how detailed you want me to talk to you about them. Of course, we can't do that in a session like this. But obviously, if you're going to vote on somebody, you have to have some detail on them. And I would give that to you next time when we meet at the 19th, since it would be a business meeting. And I assume, Mr. Corbel, if you're listening to me, that is appropriate for me to discuss a little bit further whoever I bring up for a motion at that time.
Yes. Yep.
Go ahead.
No, Steve, I would say yes, it is, but depending on what the conversation is, there is the option for an executive session to discuss that. But to give background about somebody, that's going to be that's totally fine to discuss that in public session.
That's all I would do, just talk about some positive background. I'm close to thinking at least one of the candidates so far, it would be good. And I would like to just do one right now, just to get somebody on to fill in some gaps as we start, working on different things. And then we can work on the second one meanwhile in June, and I can still consider some other candidates as we go. I want to just thank Mr. Thielacker and Mr. Gorel for the strategy session we had. That was very good. Let me go on to item B then, the pool update.
Steve, before you go on, if I could I just wanted to put on the record, because of the communication that was said last week at the meeting, I just wanted to clear the air. I was never getting involved in the hiring process or the screening of any of our candidates that are applying for Public Works. It was all a strategy thing. I think that Mr. Thielacker and Mr. Morris are on the right track, and we talked some things over, and I think that they're going in a great direction. But I did want to just put that on the record that I did not want anything to do with the hiring process, and I still don't want anything to do with the hiring process. And that's all. Thank you, Mr. Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. It was a great strategy session, by the way. I really appreciate it. It worked out really well. And I know Jim Thielacker also appreciated it as well. So that was great. If nobody else has anything, let me move on to item B. I wanted to give you an update of the pool. And by the way, I forwarded this information to the rec boards, well, the chair of the rec board, so they know. We're still targeting Saturday, May 29th, but the weather is not cooperating. And there are 3 areas that we are concerned about. The last area is electric. Electric service, we believe, should be hooked up tomorrow. So that's good. That's the revision of the, or that's not the right word, but you know what I mean. The repair, revision, the update of the electric in the pool lodge that we did as part of the grant that Mr. Gillen worked out with us and with the CITF grant. So that's good. As you know, let me just go from bottom to top. Caulking, we did discover a couple of problems. The company is ready to go to fix the problem, but like everything else, we're having trouble getting the supplies in. The caulk is on order. They anticipate right now that they think they'll be able to do it early next week. Obviously, we need to fix those few places. It's not the whole pool that needs caulk, just a few areas that we discovered last year that still had leaks, and this is all under warranty. So the contractor is ready to go. Otherwise, we're just waiting for the material to come in. And again, the information we have is we think Monday or Tuesday it should be good to go. Of course, the cold weather could affect application, but if it's about what it is now, a little bit better, we should be okay with caulking. Now, painting is more weather sensitive than anything. Painting, the pool has been painted in 3 years and it desperately needs it, of course, because there was caulking work done. We do need to have some of those areas painted anyway. And the temperature needs to be consistently above 50 degrees. That's what we haven't had right now. The crew is ready to go. That's, by the way, another reason why I want to get somebody else on the crew here too, just to have enough people to get this going. But it will take, once it's painted, 5 days for the paint to set up and dry. And then, of course, it will take 3 days to fill the pool and treat it. So, we're looking at a deadline. The crew has cleaned the pool. A lot of other things are ready to go. I know they've done some looking at the boiler and things like that. That's not quite obviously something we can check until the pool has water in it. There are a few other additional items around the pool that we're going to do and we are working on, but that are not related to opening the pool. But that is the thing that we're most concerned about, the painting. So we need some warm weather, consistent warm weather. The pool itself won't take terribly long to get painted with the whole crew there working on it, but it will take a while to dry. So I wanted to make sure everyone's aware of that. I passed that on to the rec board and Cindy as well. As we get closer, of course, we'll put things on the website if we have to and whatever. But right now we're hoping the 29th is still a go, but it's hard to say right now because of the weather. Anybody have any comments, questions? Okay. Item C, again, it's just an FYI kind of thing. As you know, Cindy's applying for a grant that Senator Costa made us aware of for the rec lodge area. And that grant also, as other grants have, require a resolution from council that says you support the grant application. It's $150,000. And we're pretty optimistic about being able to get it. So I will have a resolution for a vote under borough property next Wednesday, the 19th. I don't think there should be any questions about that. So I'm going to go on. The 2 reminders, I already talked to you about the street lights last week, but in case you weren't there or weren't aware, there were 2 features. One was the wattage on Fillmore, Watt, and Tanglewood. I showed you that the Duquesne light has increased the wattage significantly. So I didn't think you wanted to go for the highest anymore because that would be very, very bright. So the committee recommended that we look at 95 watt on Fillmore, which was the original higher number when they were first starting to do LED. And then for Watt and Tangle, which is a little bit more condensed, we would go with a slightly lower wattage, 60 watts for the street lights for the LED there. And then if you recall, I also asked you to take a look at other areas where we already put LED lights, particularly Ardmore. There's no hurry on that because Duquesne Light would be willing to now increase the wattage if we think we need it at no cost. Because of course they make more money on a higher wattage. But regardless, if you think it's not bright enough, the areas we did were Greensburg Pike, Braddock between Greensburg Pike and Ardmore, including the park, and Ardmore Boulevard. Those were the only 3 stretches of roads that we converted so far to LED. And again, I think I mentioned they had some controversy with Duquesne Light, not controversy. I'm sorry, I'm misusing words. It's old age. Anyway, I had some concerns because Duquesne Light seemed to have the wrong wattages for Ardmore Boulevard. In fact, they showed some parts of Ardmore that had not been converted. So I'm asking them to take a look back at that so I have accurate wattages before we make any decisions on that. But still, if you get a chance when you're out driving around the borough, take a look at those 3 areas. See if you think that we should consider increased wattage. I'll just keep reminding you about this until we make a decision. Again, no hurry on that. And then again, my other reminder, usually under this committee of the whole, you consider the shell font contracts. And just a reminder that police and public works end this year, I'm sorry. And the agreement you have right now says that both sides agree that if they're going to continue the contract or get a new contract, they would begin negotiations before August 1st. And that's of course up to you how you want to handle that. Just a reminder, nothing more. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Steve. In talking about the item about the shelf on contracts, generally speaking, we haven't had any desire to change the language in the contracts, and neither has Chalfont. I spoke to Chad Hoover, their president, and he doesn't see any need to make any modifications. So basically, all we do is we place in the increases in the wages or anything else that we feel appropriate, send them a copy, and if anybody wants to meet, unless there is some overriding concern that somebody has about the present contract, it should simply stay in place with the increases, and we do that on a regular basis in terms of the salaries and so on. So we don't have the police contract done yet, but we do have the public works. We could make those changes. I think Wendy would go through that process and put them into the agreement. So I don't think there's any major problem with that. So if anybody does have any questions, please contact Mr. Morris, let him know, and we can discuss it.
And in the meantime, Mr. Tomasky, you want me to ask Wendy to begin the process of
Yes.
updating that?
Please. Okay. Number 2, the executive sessions. Very quickly, executive sessions can be requested, but they have to be called by the president of council and or a majority vote of the councilman, council persons present at the time. They generally were pretty easy to put into place because we had in-person meetings, et cetera, and you could have them done at any time because we had a full complement of people available. This Zoom situation, personally, I don't like doing any kind of exec sessions via Zoom. I would prefer in person, especially when you're talking about legal aspects and or personnel. And to that end, I will be asking that we have at the next meeting, the business meeting, that we have an in-person executive session after that meeting. So I'm calling for that at this time. Okay, other than that, we have the solicitor's report. Mr. Corbel?
And nothing really to report. Mr. Morris included a link to the wall restoration agreement from PennDOT. I've reviewed it. It's as acceptable as you can get on a PennDOT agreement, so I would have no issue with council considering that at the meeting next Wednesday. PennDOT does require there's a resolution authorizing Mr. Morris to execute it as part of the approval process. So I'd suggest that you do that. next week. And that's all I have.
Well, can you fill us in on where we are with the bistro and the removal of that property, et cetera? We were supposed to have some kind of agreement with Action Housing. Could you
Yes,
take us through that, please?
Yeah, sure. And then also we are next week going to be adopting, we're considering for adoption, the weight limit issue on West, down to the old Westinghouse site. That'll be on there. But as it relates to that, the Action Housing, I did the license agreement today to get their attorney their review. And then thereafter, we will share it with the Roman Bistro. They can have their legal counsel review it. Mr. Gilland reviewed the amount of fill that was removed from the site and cross-referenced information provided by Mr. Gorel and determined that the cost of the fill was $875, I believe. And so part of the license agreement with the bistro will be that they pay the borough $875 in exchange for the license agreement. So that's where we are. Hopefully have better sense maybe next week in executive session. I could fill in counsel as to where things have gone after Action Housing's had a week to review the agreement and maybe provided some feedback.
Okay.
Hope that answers your question, Mr.
Well, I'm asking is for a report on where we're at. And now we have number 4, Alcosan regionalization requested by Ms. DeMarco.
Yes, you have a letter report from Glen Engineering regarding the Alcosan regionalization trunk sewer takeover. If you recall, I guess earlier this year before COVID, we had a whole bunch of maps on the table showing our responsible areas for trunk line improvements, which are underway. I don't believe, Mr. Corbel, that we can execute this MOU until those repairs are complete. Is that correct?
Well, no, we will actually be reviewing the MOU prior to the repairs taking place. I did complete that draft, and it has been shared with the other solicitors in the adjoining communities, and just waiting feedback from them.
Okay, so I know that a lot of this is boilerplate that was developed by Alcosan, and none of us can really change a lot of it. But I think the cost sharing paragraphs should be something we should all be comfortable with. I wanted to note that this is a project for which our American Rescue Fund would be eligible. So we have a considerable obligation because we have the majority of the trunk line that needs to be turned over. And I think it would be an appropriate use of the American Rescue Fund revenues if we can actually use it for this, because it would avoid us having to take it out of our capital reserve. So I just wanted to bring that up and allow you to think about that for a little bit while we wait for details on how much that will be. But it's going to be, I think, $242,000 total that we have to pay into this. So we need to make preparations for dealing with that at the appropriate time. And Mr. Corbel, who else is, did we ever get any feedback from some of the people who weren't at the meeting? I believe Wilkinsburg wasn't present at the briefing.
To my knowledge, no, but Mr. Ziskow or Mr. Gilland may have engaged with them. But from the legal side of things, I have not. No.
Okay. Is there anything else we need to worry about this before we see those MOU documents?
I do not believe so, no.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I have on this.
Okay, I don't see anything else on the agenda. So I assume we are done. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
I know. See everybody.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I'm ending the meeting.